I'm Simon Ditchburn. I'm the Managing Director of the Tudor Group of Companies, and you're watching the multitasking of the Cube Condominium. Last month, in the month of April, well, that is the Songkran holiday for Thailand, and it's the biggest holiday of the year. It's the Thai New Year, and it's also, for the tourists, the biggest water fight in the world. But from our point of view, that means a lot of the factories have been shut down for at least 2 or 3 weeks for that holiday period, and we've got to somehow work around those problems. And now, the following month, in the month of May, we've got to do a lot of multitasking to try and catch up with that lost time. So what we've done is we've now separated the building into different sections, a Zone A and a Zone B. Zone A is basically running from Tudor Court down to the Nordic project, which is right next to me, and then we've separated into Zone B, which is parallel with the Nordic project. So where I'm standing at the moment is the last show that you saw when we were pouring the lift, which is behind me here, and those columns, and we were waiting at that time for K Group to deliver their walls. So they delivered enough walls before the Songkran holiday for us to complete the Zone A, which is completely there behind me, and we've taken that now a step further. We've also completely scaffolded that area, taking us into the next floor, and now we're going ahead with the steel work. That means we can keep working forward in that direction in the time that we're waiting for the walls to be delivered in this last section. So let's go and have a closer look and see exactly what I mean. Okay, a little bit closer inspection of what I've just explained there. You can see behind me here, this entire zone and section, the walls have already gone in place. Now that will actually continue in this direction, which is basically behind the camera, and then just a short walk into this direction, and you can see that the scaffolding is already in place right the way through what we just called Zone A, and that's ready to support the next floor. Now we're going to take a short trip up the ladder and show you the steel work that's already started on the top. Now I'm standing on the top of that scaffolding now, and you could see it's exactly the same as some of the previous shows we've shown you, with the steel being laid out. Now, just for the record, so everybody really knows where we are on the construction stages, this is floor number 5. The columns are being made up downstairs, and I will take you down there in a couple of minutes, and those columns will be supporting floor number 6. We've got 8 floors in planned, so we're coming up through those stages very nicely. But it's not the only multitasking that we're having to do at the moment. So I'm going to take you back downstairs again and show you some of the more jobs that are going on at exactly the same time. Next to me here we have all of the steel reinforcing for the columns, and we make everything up on the ground floor. We can actually make these up on site, and as a completed unit we will crane these into position and just tie them together for that final fitting. But the lift has to be done differently. With the lift we have to lift up individual steel lengths and actually tie it together in place. So we'll send in the drone and you can take a closer look. down onto floor number 4 now. This was the first floor that we just started filming, where we're waiting for the wall panels to arrive. But that still doesn't stop us from being able to build all of the external walls. Now the external walls, as I showed you before, is the thermalite block on the inside, the concrete block on the outside. And of course we've got the window templates going in place. Now the idea of the window template is that all of our windows will be uniform, and that makes the job much more easy for the window company when he comes a little bit later. But there's still more. Let's go downstairs and you can see some of the other jobs that are going on. I'm coming down inside the building now, where we have a lot of the small detail work which has got to catch up with the big impressive work that's going on upstairs. And a lot of people keep making the mistake of looking at all the big impressive work, and they forget just how much time is involved in all of those small details. Now here's a staircase that's going on right behind me. The shuttering is ready, and that will be poured with concrete tomorrow. Now basically these staircases have always got to follow one floor behind the main floor pouring of the concrete. So once that one is finished and all of the scaffold is taken out, then you can shutter for the staircase. So that last little gap to get onto those top floors has got to be done by ladders and scaffold. Once you get into the more comfortable areas, then you will actually have a staircase to walk up and down. But there's one of the small details that's going on the 3rd floor. Again on the 3rd floor, the electricians are putting in all of the electrical conduits. Now we'll come into the details of that at a later date when I will cover that properly. But as we've explained several times before, within the precast walls we have the electrics already set, but the electrician has to then join on to that and run everything through the ceilings. This is all the conduit work that's going to be above your ceilings. And again, another job that has to be done is the detail work inside the building. At the top of the precast walls you can see a fire barrier going into position. Now as you know, the precast is not supporting, so it has to fill in that gap. It's all about prevention. If you had a fire in your living room, for example, you don't want that fire to be able to spread through into the bedroom. So the gap between the concrete slab and the precast is all filled in with blocks, and then it will be plastered, and that final 1 centimetre gap at the top will actually be filled in with a fireproof acrylic. Now that's still soft enough to allow the floor to be flexible, but it stops a fire, prevention of fire spreading from one room to another. This is one of those items that just too many developers just forget. They forget or leave it out. It's a seriously important item, and it's something that should be checked more often. The things I honestly do to get on the camera and explain everything that's going on. But nevertheless, here I am sat on the top of a piece of scaffolding here, and I wanted to explain to you that the window lintels can now go in position. Now with the floor slab completed, the scaffolding removed, and also the window template removed, the blocks were obviously set to be exactly level with the top of the window template. Now that's been removed, we know that the block is in the correct position. So the window lintel can now be lifted on the top of those blocks, and then we can finish off the fire break on the outside of the wall right up to the slab. But it's the only chance you really have of putting these lintels in position. People would think it to be coming the earlies, but it's actually coming later than the slab. Anyway, that's another detail that's going on at the moment. Here's one of those small annoying details that take up a lot of the time in this sort of construction. Now, no fault of the precast, this is the way it works. When the door frame is designed in the position of where the architect wants the door frame, this ends up in a position with such a narrow needle of concrete to form the last part of the door frame. It would be so delicate and small, it could actually break off when the precast cap panel comes into position. So to complete the door frame, we have half, as you can see, and we have to ourselves then put in the final leg of the door frame. So what you've got here is reinforcing steel that's been drilled, doweled and welded into another section of the wall. And we have actually got to cast for ourselves that final leg of the door frame. And there's nothing wrong with that, this is exactly what I expect. But it is one of those small details that takes up a lot of time. On the third floor here, we're now putting in the floor levelling. As I explained in one of the previous episodes, the actual concrete slab itself will never be level enough just to put the tiles straight on top. So we level the floors with an extra 2 to 3 centimetres of cement, make sure everything is completely correct, and then just using tile adhesive, the tiles will go on the top of this. Now, if we were doing this in Europe, we like to use a dry cement mix, but you have to understand the weather conditions are different in Europe as opposed to Asia. Here is a real tropical, a very wet atmosphere country. So here we like to do it in a wet slurry mix. So the first thing that happens is we lay down tram lines. The tram lines are made out of cement, and those tram lines are levelled to our meter point all the way around the building. So we know that we have the correct level, exactly what we're looking for. Then with the cement mixer literally right next door to the tram lines, we can mix in the room, pour directly from the machine a slurry mix of cement, and then with your straight edge you would go from tram line to make sure we have a nice level floor. I can show you an example of that in the room next door. Now, to show you an example of what I was just talking about, here is an area that the guys are actually working on at the moment, and they will literally put the mixer right next door to where we're working. So they will mix here and they will pour it straight out as the slurry. And I was explaining, although I don't actually do this myself over here, we have the tram lines, and the straight edge will basically guide along the tram lines to make sure that our floor is correct and level. And I can show you a completed room just 2 doors down. Okay, here we have a room that's already completed. In fact, it was literally completed today. You can still see the water sheen on the top, but that is now nice and level, ready for the tiles to go on top. I'm way down now into the second floor, and you can see that things here are totally different. In fact, we're almost up to the decoration stage. On the second floor, the electrician has already been through and cabled all of his conduits, so that's what they call the second fix, and it's ready to go with the final fix after the decoration. The walls have all been skim coated. That's the final layer of plaster that goes on the top, which is your decoration finish, and those walls stand at the moment with the primer on. So they will be ready to be painted very shortly, to be honest with you. Smoke alarm has gone into position, so really we could start framing out the ceilings here right the way through the second floor. Also on the second floor, the floor levelling is all done. This is exactly the finished level that we're looking for, ready for the tiles to go on the top of it. That will also be starting very, very shortly. I called this episode multitasking because I wanted to show you just how many jobs are going on at exactly the same time. So perhaps next time you're just driving past the building site and you see it from the outside, perhaps next time you'll take a bit more consideration of what's actually going on at the inside at the same time. Anyway, nevertheless, we'll leave you for now and we'll rejoin you again when we do the concrete pour up on the 5th floor. So we'll see you next time.